We're going to check out some of the latest updates to Tableau Pulse. These came out in 2024, but I didn't get a chance to cover them. So in this video, we're going to go through them in quick succession. We're going to just check them out in a relaxed way. I haven't actually logged into Tableau Pulse in a couple of months, since I think November 24. So it'd be cool to see what it's like, some of the new updates and how it's going in general. As ever, let's get stuck in. Okay, so if we head to Tableau Cloud, I'm logged in here. You can see this has not changed. I kind of describe this interface as the legacy Tableau. I know everyone at Salesforce will hate me saying that, but it's just true, because this is a very different Chrome and setup to what we're going to see in Tableau Pulse. And what it feels like all of the Tableau demos have been about going forward. There's definitely a different interface. I think it is a big deal, because I think it's like a tool that you've been using for a while. When it changes color, you lose that sort of, what is it, the connection, the mental connection you had with that thing, the memories, all of the things you're associated with that just have a different sort of context in your mind. So it's a small thing, but it's a big thing. Anyway, if I head over to Tableau Pulse, you typically go to that by clicking. If I go back to Tableau Cloud, you click on Tableau Pulse just here. When you click that, it opens it in the same window. I actually don't like that. I'd prefer if it opened it in the different window. And here we are. We got that notice as well telling us that we're using Tableau AI. You do need to enable Tableau Pulse and Tableau AI in order to be able to use this feature. So it's super important to make sure you go and do that. I've already done a video about how to do that as well. So here we are in the standard experience. Now, if you're not familiar with Tableau Pulse, it's essentially a metrics focused setup inside of the Tableau ecosystem. It connects to a data source and then allows everyday analysts to essentially set up these metrics to follow things that they're passionate about. Now, when you set up a metric, you get a bunch of different options that allow you to choose how that metric can be sliced and diced. And you also get a bit of control with things like date context. So go ahead and check out my video where I go through this. I also have a course on LinkedIn Learning, which is a little bit more structured, that goes through this in much more depth. So go ahead and check that out if you have a LinkedIn premium subscription. But nonetheless, here we are on the landing page. Now, I don't notice anything like, massively different. It's definitely a little bit more polished up. There's a couple of features that, are worth calling out. And if you're wondering, well, how do you know what's new and how do you know what was there before since you last checked? I'm using something called the Tableau Release Navigator. This is a feature of Tableau. It's actually an officially supported feature. It was part of a release cycle, and Tableau updated with each release, showing us what's been updated. And so it's just a dashboard in Tableau. It could be a lot nicer, it could be a lot neater. I know there's a few examples of this already in the community that are a lot sort of nicer designed, but if you filter to Tableau Pulse on the left hand side, and all you do is you essentially go and choose all the product versions, essentially by just selecting all here, you'll basically get all the updates that have ever been launched for Tableau Pulse, including the original launch. So if you look here on the left hand side, we get everything going back from, I think we have September 24, I don't know why that's down there, but March 24 is when it launched, and then you have September 24 there, and then you have all the updates basically in sort of chronological order. I don't know why September 24 is down there, but that's good to know. So I last used this in I think I would say November. So if I just look at this, there's a couple of things to be aware of. Number one, Tableau Pulse launches on a monthly schedule. So you can see here you've got updates virtually every month. They don't wait for the cadence of releases to update Tableau Pulse. So you'll see here you have January 25, which is literally just about to end. You have February 24. And there are sort of in frequency. You have August 24, you have September 24, so you have August, September, November is here, December's there, but August was really sort of the big update really in real terms. This is when we got a bunch of what I would say meaningful features. The first one here is Tableau Pulse goals. If I just go ahead and click on that, you'll see it says create a goal in Tableau Pulse to track a metrics progress towards that goal. After a goal is created, you'll see your progress toward that goal in your Tableau Pulse digest and on your Tableau Pulse homepage. So essentially the homepage that we see Tableau Pulse. So let's go ahead and try and take a look at how to do that. So I have some metrics set up here. They're all updating. The way I did this is I went into Tableau Prep and I took Superstore and I basically offset the dates by a certain amount of time. So basically every day as Tableau Pulse checks that data set, there will always be something in that data set for the current date. Now there is a new feature that allows you to offset dates that's sort of different, but kind of the same thing. So let's go ahead and just look at profit as an example. We'll go in here and you'll see that this is pretty nice, and you can go ahead and do some things like ask questions about this metrics, observe it, and generally sort of work with it. Now, if I go back to the home page, you'll see these again, just the metrics that I'm following. If I go to browse metrics, this allows me to see all the metrics that have been created. So I've got 3 metric definitions. These are the definitions that drive the metrics, and I have 4 metrics. So one metric definition can serve multiple metrics. You can see here I've got profit, and it's got 2 metrics. So if I go ahead and click on that, I'll see the 2 metrics that have been created from the 1 metric definition. And if I want to change the definition, I can absolutely go ahead and do that and you get this interface. And so when we get to this page, you'll notice that now we have a slightly more tiered approach. I like this setup because I think it's really, really good. You have the sort of stage that you're at on the left. You have the core definition, which is just basically mapping to what we've selected here. Then you have the metric sort of being created on the right-hand side. So I don't have anything to change in here. The core definition more or less stays the same as I would generally sort of keep it for now. We'll come back and look at some of the other features a little later on. But if I go to the goal section, now we get to see this new ability, and this has actually been recently changed to be made available for everyone. Setting a goal was something that was mentioned at the DataFam Europe event as being kind of essential to all analytics tools, and so that was a bit of feedback that got taken back, and it became a standard feature of all of Tableau Pulse. So everyone who has Tableau Pulse gets that capability. So what we can do is we can go and say, hey, look, let's go ahead and set a goal. Now, the interesting thing here, the values of this measure are summed based on a metric time range to produce an aggregate goal. So my metric is profit. It would suggest that I can set a goal that's different to my metric. That would be counterintuitive for this profit goal. So let me just go ahead and select profit, and I'll go ahead and choose the same order date. Here we go. And then let's see, granularity of goal day measure. That's fine. Okay. What this is basically saying is that your goal has to be a measure. So for example, the goal could be a budget. The goal could be a certain percentage. So I don't have that as a field in this, but you can see that as I've chosen the profit and then order date and then the day, you can see that it basically has that component. Now, I actually think this is really powerful for 2 reasons, because if you think about how this data source is built in the first place, what that means is you can go ahead and build a good data model that has your raw data, which basically has your transactions, and then you can have a data model that's linked by date and, let's say, department, and that can be aggregated to the department, and it can be maybe set to a monthly level, whereas your transactions are coming in at a daily level. And what this allows Pulse to do is track against budgets or targets that are aggregated at different levels, as long as you're using something like the data model. You wouldn't want to go ahead and join your budgets to your transactional data source because they might not necessarily be at the same level of aggregation. So this allows you to set that up in a really, really good way. We don't have that example here, but that's sort of how I would think through this problem, and that's sort of how I'd set it up. So I think this is really, really nice. It's really well set up, and I think you can use this to your advantage. And then if we go ahead and hit next, I think it allows us to then go to the insights pane, which was previously sort of part of the definition piece, but now it's a little bit more thorough. You've got all the same controls, they've just changed sort of how the interface works. And go ahead and hit save. I want these changes to take effect. We'll save this metric, and now you can see here the metric definition that we've changed has now also updated the original metric. So with each metric definition, you immediately get 1 metric. There's sort of always a one-to-one relationship in that first definition that you create. Subsequent metrics generated from it are basically generated by changing the filters. And so these create new metrics as off the back of that. So there we go. I have my goal for the profit. Now, if I go back and I go back to my home page, let's just go back to the following page here, and let's go find, let's just refresh this. Oh, it's actually already there. You can see here that it's saying here that 100% of the goal has been met. And because I had 2 metrics off that first definition, actually both of these metrics have sort of carried over that specific goal. There's actually a bunch of different metrics. See, this one doesn't have a metric related to it. So it looks like I've actually created 3 metrics from that one specific set. Let me just go ahead and browse. I'm not sure that's the case because I've got two profit metric definitions, but here I seem to be seeing 3 metrics. That's an interesting one because I don't know how that's working. I'm somehow following 3 things. Month to date. This is furniture filtered. Okay, so I'm not seeing sort of 3 items here. I think it just might either be that the definition is driving these metrics, but maybe one of them doesn't count as a metric. I'm not 100% sure why that is, but nonetheless, I think this is pretty good. So that's metric goals. I think this is a super valuable feature, and I think it's going to be quite handy to have. Now, another thing you can do is you can now sort on this homepage. So let's go ahead and try this. It's actually right here on the right hand side. So you can see here that I can sort by specific elements. Now, this is sort of sorting and grouping. So sorting basically arranges them based on like an item. So it will be like a time range, when you recently follow them, basically based off metadata. But you can also essentially sort by metric definition, which is in real terms a kind of grouping. So metric definition and data sources are going to be groupings. So if I go ahead and do that, you'll see that it actually performs this grouping, and this grouping is actually quite nice. You can see that I can expand it and collapse it and kind of get it working really nicely. So I kind of like that. But again, this to me is just, you know, very standard. It's nice to have it by data source, because I think what this allows you to do is sort of troubleshoot sometimes when you have metrics that can potentially come from two different data sources, have the same name, but you actually want to sort of whittle them down a little bit. It's just another way of being able to cut through the noise a little bit better. And then obviously the time range one allows you to basically look at metrics that are operating at slightly different contexts. So for example, this one I think is a weekly value. So it's basically showing you this metric last updated last week, and these ones are operating on a monthly basis. So you kind of get that time element as a way of grouping. So it's quite a nice way to be able to sort of cut through that as well. Recently followed is obviously the default one, and you can set this as a default order by just selecting this option here. I think that's quite a nice touch as well. If I go to date source range, I can again set that as a default, and so by doing that every time I come back to Tableau, you'll see that it just gives us that as the default option, but not just when we're looking here but also on mobile as well. So if I was to click on, let's go if I try and go back to, I think this is the home page, so it's kind of weird, this is the home page you see, but if I just go to browse metrics and come back, you'll see that the sorting has persisted essentially. So that's pretty good. Again, that's just a nice quality of life improvement to be able to just make things a little bit neater and tidier. The other thing they've done is they've enhanced the type of questions you can ask. You can, for example, ask about different time elements within the ask function. So let's go ahead and let me show you the ask function. Let's just do a refresher. The ask function is a little bit of a tricky one to find because it just falls below the fold on the standard screen. For the record, I have like a 1080p screen, but I actually have a 4K screen. So when I'm using this, it looks more like this. So I'm always able to see ask, but I appreciate if you're using a laptop, your screen looks more like this, which is why I record videos and demos like this. So just scroll down here and you'll see that the ask capability is available here. So we can ask, look, what segment decreased the most, and it will give us that question here, and I can go in here and ask, well, what are we doing? What about last month? And I think this we'll create the link to this, and it will just create you that perspective. So this is profit, it's got no filters, it's opened up this specific view, but if I go back to my original one, you can see this is profit month to date. So it's essentially gone and explored other bits of context that you can kind of get from this. Let's just try something interesting. What about last week? And you can see that it's got another context there. So it's basically creating these, what I would call dynamic metrics sort of off the back of this. Now, if I follow these, let's just go to that one and follow that one, and let's go to that one and follow that one. I should theoretically have two new metrics. So if I go back to the Tableau Pulse homepage, you'll see that it has increased the number of metrics that I've got here, which is kind of good. If I go to the browse metrics, we should see that that's increased by 2 to 4. So you can see that just by asking questions, you're actually able to additionally build new metrics. It's kind of a smart way of doing it. It's a smart way of sort of allowing people to naturally be a little bit more free with the way they use the tool. So I think that's quite cool. Let me just double check the capability, just see if I missed something here. So you can zoom into technology. Okay, cool. California last week, zoom into technology. Okay, so yeah, I think you can just be a little bit more kind of expressive. Now, I expect that to get better and better and better with time as these natural language models kind of better understand what we do. It makes sense that you can do more kind of niche things like that. That makes total sense. Okay, let's look at date offset. So let's see this description. So you can now add a date offset to your metric definition to change the final point in the time series from today to a set number of days. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at that metric definitions place, because I think I can't remember seeing that. So if I go back to my metrics here, go to profit, it brings us to the metric definition with the metrics that are feeding it. I'll go ahead and edit the definition. And now that I'm here, the core definition is where I think I'd be able to change the date offset. Now, if I go down, you can see the time dimensions right there, order date. Now, if I go here to the advanced time settings, what I can do is I can actually say, look, can you look back 1 month? Okay, so what I think this will do is it will take us back to the beginning of January in essence. So it basically assumes that we are going back in time. This is a really good way of handling data sets that maybe don't update to the current date and time, because Tableau Pulse grounds itself on today's date. So if your data updates weekly, what you can do is you can set up this metric to always be sort of a week behind, so that it's always basically up to date. So if you're working in sales, or you're working in consumer goods, or you're working in banking or insurance, real-time data doesn't really literally arrive in your data system on the same day, but you tend to have end of week, end of month reporting cycles. So this is a really good way of having a metric that actually locks itself to those scopes in a very neat way. So I think this is really nice. These are important quality of life improvements, and I think it actually makes this metric definition setup one of the best places to be able to do this stuff in Tableau. So I wish we had this in the desktop. Actually, talking of that, I think we do have the ability to add this to the desktop. You can now add a pulse metric to your dashboards. When you add this object, you can choose from metrics that connect to the same published data source that are used by the workbook. So in order to do this, what I'm going to do, we're just going to go back to online.tableau.com. This is the Tableau Cloud URL. One day they'll call it cloud.tableau.com, but that will come with a lot of change and upheaval. Let's go to explore, and they've got this sort of new interface. They're slowly sneaking in here as well. I've never seen this like little view here. It's kind of it's a cheeky little change, but I appreciate they're kind of getting people familiar with this, I think, upcoming change in Tableau itself. So the thing I'm looking for here is actually data sets, because I think I have 8 data sets, and there's my Tableau Pulse demo data set. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and create a new workbook using this data source. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I also have a pulse metric that's using this data source. So when I go to the dashboard object, let's just go straight to the dashboard here, you'll see that we have a whole list of objects here on the left hand side, and there we have the pulse metric. So if I just go ahead and grab and drop that in, we should see an interface that gives us the ability to choose from Tableau Pulse. Now you can see that I get my 3 metric definitions right here. So you have profit. Now we've created 4. If you recall, we started with 2, we created 4. They've shown up here straight away. So I think this is really, really nice. And then if we go ahead and maybe just choose month to date, you can choose 2 styles. You can link it to Tableau Pulse, which is a tick. I can also choose the style that's available in Tableau Pulse itself. That gives you this sort of rounded box version. I'll untick it because I actually think I prefer this. This is more subtle. It sits in a dashboard quite nicely, and it makes it look like I built it, which if you're a developer, you need to be building your metrics in here and dropping them in, and then just walking away from the dashboard, just keeping the data source updated. No more dashboard updates for you. That's actually a good thing. So we'll go ahead and add that to the dashboard, and there we go. We have this context. Now, the really interesting thing would be to see if it sort of responds to categorical elements. So the quick thing I'll do is I'll build a basic chart with region and cells just to see if we can get this working. I'll go back to the dashboard. I'll drag it in just to the left here. So you can see that it doesn't count as a sheet, it just counts as a dashboard object. You see the sheets on the left here. You don't really have anything. And by the way, when you click on it, it takes you to Tableau Pulse, which is a little bit frustrating sometimes. But what I want to do is see if I can set this as a filter. So if I set this as a filter, it's not really liking it. It's not wanting me to use that as a filter. I don't know if it's because I don't have something else. Let me just build one more thing. I don't know if using this categorically rules out the ability to do what I'm thinking of doing. So now if I've got that there, okay, that does work, uses filter, but I'm fairly certain that, yeah, it's only going to affect the bottom shoe. So the categorical filters don't pass through to the profit side here, but I think this is good because, you know, there is this sort of this is annoying me now. Can I disable the click on this? No, I cannot. I cannot get it. Clicking, okay, if I this is what I'm gonna have to do. Link to Tableau Pulse, update. So now I can click to my heart's content. You can see that I'm doing that and nothing's happening. And now I can build my dashboard, and right before I publish, I'll then come in here, configure and link it to Tableau Pulse so that if people want to go and look at it, they can do that. But it's actually quite nice to have it as a static asset as well without having to do that. So I think this is quite nice, and it's nicely set up. So this is a great little feature. I love it. I love the way it's been set up. Good work, Tableau Pulse team. And I think this is, man, this is just, it's just so important to be able to build this stuff. This is the kind of stuff that we waste a ton of time building inside of Tableau Pulse, so Tableau itself, sorry. So we looked at data offsets, we've looked at goals, we've looked at grouping and sorting, we've looked at the improved ask experience. There is a bunch of other stuff that I think I covered way back in February, so I won't touch on them again. There's a bunch of stuff in Slack and the Salesforce app, so I'll have to look at those in a different video. Personalized insight tracking, so enhance your insights by letting Tableau Pulse know which insights you find most valuable. Your thumbs up and thumbs down feedback on insights influence which insights you see first. But being available in 14 languages I think is quite useful. I think that's really important for global adoption as well. You know, large businesses tend to be multinational, so having multi-language support just makes the interface a little bit more accessible and easier to use. So there we have it. I've spent 30 minutes. I think that's more than long enough. I've done timestamps so you can follow these along. I think it is important to keep in touch with Tableau Pulse and understanding what it's doing. I think this will prove to be a pretty important part of the Tableau ecosystem. I wish it was just part of the system and not a separate site without, you know, all the other Chrome that comes into it. But nonetheless, it is what it is. We'll stop the video here. Let me head back to the Tableau Pulse landing page so you can see that. And by the way, there is a link back to Tableau Cloud in case you get lost, so you can go ahead, click on that, and it takes you back to the Tableau Cloud experience. Okay, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.